Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet a Scientist, sponsored by New Mexico EPSCoR. I'm your host, Caitlin Everhart from Explora Science Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Today we have Regis Lacher, who is an education specialist at the University of New Mexico Clinical and Translational Science Center. That's a little bit of a mouthful. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
So why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. So I'm an adult educator at UNM Health Sciences in the research areas. The world of science and medicine is full of specialists, lots of people who have devoted their careers to studying really specific problems about the body or problems in society. And those people make a lot of amazing discoveries. But because they're specialists, they have gaps in what they know about the world. Like they don't always know where to get money to do their research. And they need to be coached sometimes on the ethical issues of doing research that involves human beings. So what I do is I get to find these gaps, find the things that these scientists maybe could use another person to help them sit down and learn. So I get to learn about these issues and then find ways to convey what I've learned to these specialists. It's really different from teaching in high school or college because there's not any grades, there aren't any tests, and the classes are really, really short. And I'm educating people a lot of time that are a lot more educated and a lot smarter than me. I have a Bachelor of Arts, but I get to teach PhDs, MDs, people with all kinds of terminal degrees. But the end goal is essentially the same. So if I do my job right, then there's sometimes an aha moment, a eureka moment, where the person I'm talking to suddenly realizes they know something new, and at the same time, they start to get an idea that this new knowledge is going to change how they do their job for the better. So the research we do involves science, it involves medicine, it involves healthcare, so it involves life and death questions. So when I get to hear that aha moment from a new researcher and know that that revelation is kind of advancing or clarifying their understanding of what's right and what's wrong, I know I'm contributing. And I'm contributing towards a culture of ethical science and good science and helpful science at my institution.
Yeah, that's definitely not something that most people think about. You know, you hear the word scientist and you think the lab coat and the Erlenmeyer flask and all of that. So how did you end up where you're at today?
Well, my career pathway has kind of been all over the place. From a pretty young age, I knew I wanted to be a communicator of some kind. At first, I thought I was going to be a creative writer, a novelist, but it didn't seem like a safe bet. So I got my degree in English, and I focused on professional writing. I graduated from UNM in 2003. And after that, I was a technical writer, like writing documentation and proposals and procedures, really dry material, for companies in like the nuclear engineering fields and the civil engineering fields. And I found it really boring and really unfulfilling. I got more interested in the field I'm in now in education when I started working for a high school curriculum company that developed online learning products, where I started to give presentations to high school teachers and see how focused they were on their specific mission. At around the same time, I started doing some volunteer work, and I started doing it at a suicide hotline, crisis hotline. A lot of the time, those people were depressed or anxious, or they really just needed somebody to talk through the moment with them. But a lot of the time, those people were people who had problems that a conversation with a stranger just wasn't going to solve. These people were victims of prejudice, racism, sexism, other forms of prejudice. They were homeless, they were out of money, they couldn't afford insurance, and they were suffering. So I got to learn in that experience firsthand what it's like to be at the end of your rope without any options. And that's when I started to think to myself, maybe the reason that I'm so unfulfilled is because I'm not making a positive impact in the world. So at that point, I thought about becoming, going back to school. I thought about becoming a kindergarten teacher, possibly a therapist or a counselor. I even thought about going back to writing and becoming a children's book writer. But none of those things really stuck. Around that same time, I moved back to New Mexico because I'd been away for about 10 years. And I kind of randomly got offered a job as education specialist at UNM. This is 2016. I took it, if for no other reason than I needed a job at that point, and pretty quickly saw that this was something I started to love. So I learned on the job because I really didn't have a lot of skill at that point. And I started taking certification courses at UNM on how to educate adults. And that really rapidly advanced what I can do now and the way I approach adult learning today. And now it's 4 years in, I've built a set of courses and programs that I feel like are beneficial for the people I interact with. So now I'm applying for my master's in learning sciences at UNM so I can continue to advance my knowledge and do what I do in an even smarter way.
So after all of this experience and jumping around from place to place, is there any advice that you would give to, say, your 10-year-old self?
Yeah, I would. I think it has to do with passion. I was always a really curious child who had a lot of obsessions and cared about a lot of things. And those passions, those interests weren't always well understood by my family and by my teachers. And today I get to take that passion and run with it. I get to be passionate about finding ways to convey complicated ideas and about advancing science and advancing justice. So my advice to you, if you're 10 and you don't know what's going on and you want to know, is it's totally okay to be curious. It's okay to have no answers, but have a voracious appetite for knowledge. And it's also okay to be obsessed with things, and it's okay to care. If you have interests or questions or causes that the people around you don't really understand, that's totally okay. Those things could be strengths. It's true, you might grow out of all those things, but you might not. And if you don't grow out of those questions or those interests or those causes, those things have a good chance of developing into something that you're passionate about that starts to define your life. And at the end of the day, it's your passion that's going to lead you to have a job where you're happy and where you can do good things for others.
I can definitely relate to that. I was the biggest space nerd as a child, and it has not gone away. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.